Democrats come up short in a special election to flip a congressional seat in Georgia. After losing another House race, they came close to winning in Kansas. A headline on Politico today caught our attention. It says, quote, "Democrats begin to wonder, when do we win?" The subtitle for that article reads, "For all the roiling anger and energy at the grassroots, the party still fell short in Georgia and Kansas, and Democratic prospects in the upcoming elections aren't promising." Joining us now, Scott Jennings, former special assistant to President George W. Bush and a former advisor to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Also with us, Isaac Wright, former executive director for the 2016 principal pro-Clinton super PAC called Correct the Record. Isaac, I want to start with you. Do you agree with the premise of that Politico headline, first of all?
Well, I think the premise of the headline is a little bit off in the fact that I think there are two strong messages coming out of last night's election results, one for Democrats and one for Republicans. Republicans to beware of Trump and the impact of what he's having on congressional races, that safe Republican seats are now in jeopardy and they're expensive to hold, that Karen Handel, who won last night from the Republican perspective and won from coming out of the Republican side, actually did so by running away from Trump, and the people who did the worst on the Republican side were those who ran towards Trump. For Democrats, there is a message here that we need to be concise about our message, that we need to consolidate around a strong message of who we are as a party, not just when elections are at hand, but year-round, 365 days a year, so that we're prepared in the northern suburbs of Atlanta in Georgia and in Kansas for when the opportunity arises.
Scott, John Ossoff, the Democratic candidate who did not win a majority in last night's election, says he won a moral victory.
You know what's amazing about moral victories? I did some statistical analysis this morning, and exactly 0 members of Congress won their seat in a moral victory. About 435 got their seat in an actual victory, where they got more votes than the other candidates in the final election. And so moral victories are sort of the participation ribbon of politics. I'm sure they look great on your coat, but it's not going to get you a voting card in Washington, D.C. I sort of feel about these special elections in Georgia and Kansas the way the great Frank Robinson felt about baseball. He said close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. And in this case, the Democrats got close, but they still came up short despite the fact that they had a crushing amount of money in Georgia. It must be demoralizing to spend well over $8 million and come up short.
Isaac,
are you kidding? Democrats had twice as many votes for their leading candidate as Republicans did for theirs. And she had to run away from a sitting president just in order to be competitive after Republicans spent millions upon millions to try to bail out that primary.
But there were 11 Republican candidates in the race splitting the vote. So, you know, you do have that. Isaac, you have suggested that the Democrats shouldn't focus so much on these special elections and just kind of run a year-round campaign.
That's right. And Democrats have, since Trump took office, have made progress in things like state legislative races around the country and special elections there. Democrats have to make the move to consolidate around a message of who we are as a party. We're a party that believes in an honest day's work for an honest day's pay, and that every American should have the right to live up to their God-given potential. All people should be treated equally under the law. The principles of our party need to be on display around the country in all 50 states year-round so that we have the opportunity to make these kind of campaigns work.
Well, Scott, was this sort of an anti-Trump vote? Is this an anti-Trump election result?
I don't think so. As you pointed out, there were multiple Republicans in the race, and now you're going to have one Democrat versus one Republican. For all the money that was spent, the Democrat in this race did just slightly better than Hillary Clinton did, and obviously the turnout matrix for a special election is different than it is in a presidential race. I think at the end of the day, Democrats have a message problem. Hillary Clinton had a message problem in that she didn't really have one. I'm not certain that's actually changed since November. The Democratic Party is full of rage, and they're full of celebrities that have money to send to all these candidates around the country. But the one thing you have to win an election is a forward-looking message. If you entrust me with this office, what am I going to do with it? It's really why Hillary Clinton lost. It's why Democrats are losing special elections. And until they come up with some sort of governing message, they are going to continue to lose elections. And frankly, despite what you read in the mainstream media these days, I think Donald Trump's off to a strong start, and I don't think he's really going to be a big problem for Republicans in the special elections we have upcoming in the next few months.
Isaac,
Republicans have a Trump problem. problem. Let's keep in mind that Gray, the candidate amongst those 11 Republicans who ran the strongest, the closest to President Trump, came in nearly last. It was the candidate from the Republicans who got only half as many votes, actually less than half as many votes as the Democrat, who came in first amongst Republicans, ran away from President Trump and against 100 days of failure since he's been in office. Are Republicans going to be willing to dump millions into safe seats, seats like one they've held in the northern suburbs of Atlanta since 1979, to try to keep those seats going forward in the fall when they're up across the country? That's going to be a mathematical problem for the GOP budget that Trump causes.
Just pointing out, Democrats did spend more on one candidate than Republicans spent on 11. Quick final thought, Scott.
Yeah, I think it's an exaggeration to say Handel ran away from Trump. And also, she was the most well-known candidate in the race by some measurements. The Democrats spent well over $8 million. When the final tallies come in, it might be $9 or $10 million to try to win this race. If you were to extrapolate that to all the races they need to win in November, they'd have to rob Fort Knox to have enough money to even sniff a congressional majority. So I don't think this is really all that encouraging for Democrats. I admit there will be some competitive races out there, but they're not over the hump yet, and it's largely because they've got no message.
We'll see what happens in June when these two go head-to-head. Scott Jennings, Isaac Wright, thank you both.
Thank you.